Hey guys, Dan, Sipping Cider, Mace Windu here, coming at you with a different video today. Just gonna talk some lore stuff. I've been doing some research on well, basically, I saw this really awesome video. I'm gonna try to link it in the description of mine, but it's a really cool video that goes over a lot of the background behind the crew. So what it is, it's a comparison video between the Kroot and the orcs, and it goes into kind of how they work as a species. And it got me thinking, because he's like talking about like, okay, so there's a lot of similarities between Kroot and Orc. Like I'm not gonna go into them, but there's a lot of differences is the main point of the video. Um, and it got me thinking, like, what happens if the Kroot were to eat an Orc? So for those who don't know, like the Kroot, they are what they eat. Whatever they eat, they absorb its like DNA, and their offspring gain traits from it, which can be both a blessing and a curse. Because like, obviously, if you eat like a bear, you might gain its strength. But if you were to eat something with like a defect in it, then that's in your um, lineage now. And so the crew are like super picky about what they eat because they don't want to eat stuff that'll weaken them. They want to eat stuff that'll strengthen them. And the orc, they're this race created by the Old Ones to fight the Necrons in the War for Heaven. So that's this event that happened super long time ago. Old Ones, super powerful race, created most of the life we see here in 40K Galaxy. And so these orcs were like this race manufactured for war, and that's why they're so good at it. Um, they they reproduce like crazy. They're like fungi that just grows, and they get more powerful as they fight. As war happens, they in their DNA they have encoded the knowledge for how to get all the technology that they have. So like one thing that happens a lot in 40K is empires will grow and like gain technology, but if a dark age comes where they lose technology, all their technology is like saved externally from the species. It's like in libraries or archives. And if those are destroyed, that knowledge is lost. But like the orcs, their knowledge is encoded in their DNA. I don't think they can gain new knowledge to put in there, but they have this base knowledge that's always going to be passed down to any living orc. So they never like will fall back below a certain point. They'll never have like dark ages really. So we talked about like they can reproduce like crazy. They have this passing on of knowledge. They're just really beefy and they get stronger when they fight. They also have this ability. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like really close to. It's really close to psychic abilities where they can like if they believe. So for those who don't know, I mean, really just watch this video. It explains it much better and more cool than I can explain it. But the basic idea is that the way the warp works is like it reflects our thoughts and beliefs, and then people can channel that power. The way the orcs work is very similar. Like they create their almost own unique warp around them, and like with one orc, it's not very powerful. But when a bunch of orcs get together, it like combines, and if they all believe in something, it like happens. So that's why like their machines like they can shoot even if they don't have any ammo because the orcs will just believe that it'll shoot, and so the ammo will be there. Um, a lot of their machinery works because the orcs believe it will work. Like if another race gets a hold of the machinery, they can't use it because it's the orcs' belief that it will work that's making it work. And if no orcs are around to believe that it'll work, it won't work. So they have this like imagination belief power. So like a thought that comes up is like, oh, so if the Kroot were to eat the orc, would they gain any or all of these traits? Well, the Kroot have already been eating the orc. and they do seem to get some of their strength, and like they become more bulky. But I did some research. This wasn't talked about in the video. I couldn't find anything that said um like gaining the ability to pass down knowledge in their DNA, or the ability to reproduce like mushroom or fungi, or the ability to their like imagination belief power, or like getting stronger through fighting. Like none of those seem to get passed down. And you like the reason why, it could just be like, well, for one, it doesn't seem like the Kroot have control over what traits they inherit. Um, like they can't pick and choose. It's kind of random, and it can't be they get. It can't be that they get all traits, because, like, say a Kroot were to eat a bear and an eagle, or like something small. It's not like they would both, like, what do they get, like the strength of the bear and the weakness of the other thing at the same time? No, it has to be. It's not like they get every trait of everything they eat. So maybe the only thing that they're able to like assimilate from the orcs is their strength, and not. And it kind of makes sense. Like the other powerful things in the orcs' DNA that makes them so powerful is bioengineered by the old ones. So it's not something that just arises in nature. And it's got to be really complex. And so maybe the crew just aren't able to assimilate that. However, this got me thinking about the Tyranid. And that's the main thing I want to talk about in today's video is, what can the Tyranid gain from consuming orc biomass? So, quick overview of the Tyranid. They're a lot like the Kroot in the sense that they are it's not that they are what they eat, but they assimilate biomass, and they can like take traits from the DNA of what they assimilate and apply it to their units. It's just unlike the Kroot. It seems like they can be very selective about what traits they get, right? We don't hear about any like weaknesses in the Tyranid hive from stuff that they eat, and like the Tyranid eat everything. So if there were weaknesses that they would get from eating, they would have it show up, because they like when they come to a planet, they eat every living thing on it, down to the microbiotic level. So it seems like a Tyranid can choose which traits they want. And now this thought, I'm not the first person to have this. What happens if the Tyranid eat the orcs? I looked this up, and there's been discussions around this, and people have talked about, like, if the Tyranid were to eat the orcs, like, would they gain all those powerful abilities that we just named that are in orc DNA? Like, would they start reproducing like fungus? Would I don't know if other people talked about these other ones as much, but it certainly came to my mind. Like, what if they could start passing down knowledge and technologies in their DNA? What if they can get stronger as they fight? What if they can start just imagining things into existence like the orcs? So the orcs and the Tyranids have met in battle, and in fact the Tyranids won. So the Tyranids have consumed and fought against orcs. And this was during, I think it's Octarius was the name? Octavio? Can't remember the name, but they fought. The Tyranid won, and as far as I know, there's no mention of them gaining any of those powers. Perhaps there's some bigger units, but that's about it. Kind of similar to the Kroot, where it's like, okay, they get a little bulkier, but none of those other like really useful traits seem to be assimilated. And it got me thinking, like, I read some comments online in this discussion, and some people are like, maybe Games Workshop just didn't think about it. But I think I can defend Games Workshop here, or at least why we don't see the Tyranid necessarily picking up these powers. So we'll go through them one by one. Um, so I think the first thing is like the most obvious powerful thing I think is like, what if the and this was what people talked about mostly in the conversations I saw online, is what if the Tyranid could reproduce like the fungi that the orcs imitate in their reproduction? There'd be Tyranid everywhere, and maybe they don't need to consume biomass anymore. They could just, or like in battle, they're just like spread everywhere, like the orcs do. Well, orcs reproduce like fungi. Fungi exist, and Tyranid have definitely eaten fungi, right? Like fungus grows, it's like one of the most basic life forms. Like they've definitely come across it in our galaxy, and I'd imagine in the galaxy they come from, they've come across it. And fungi has DNA, so if the Tyranid could and wanted to have that trait, they'd already have it. The orcs having it wouldn't be anything new. What you could argue maybe is like, maybe the orcs is the first time that the Tyranids see how it can be useful. Like maybe they've like seen fungus before and they're like, why would we want to grow when we can just eat? We're hungry. We don't want to grow, we want to eat. And maybe like they finally battle these orcs and they're like, oh, these things are like really tough to get rid of, and there's so many of them. Maybe if we grew like fungus, that could be useful. So that could be an argument like why coming into contact with orcs would be a cataclysm, or an event that causes the Tyranid to start using this fungi reproduction thing. But another argument against that would be, and here I don't quite know biologically how this would work, but like, doesn't fungus need to eat something in order to grow? And if that something that it eats in order to grow is biomaterial, then growing like fungi is really no advantage to the Tyranid. The Tyranid consume all of the biomaterial that they come across. And if fungus is just doing the same thing, it's nothing new for the Tyranid. That said, it could be wrong, and it could be that fungus grows on new stuff that isn't biomaterial. It's like, there's got to be some life forms that come from no biomaterial, right? Because how does life start otherwise? And it could be fungus is one of those like basic organisms that like just grows from oxygen or some other material that isn't biomaterial. And so maybe that could be a trait that the Tyranid could learn. Um, and then an answer against it is just going back. I already touched on this lightly, but the Tyranid are just hungry. It's so overwhelming. It's talked about like when the Tyranid are in an area, the warp gets affected so strongly by their signal that like any psychers, they either are killed outright by the presence of this Tyranid. It's just their overwhelming hunger um is so powerful and darkens the warp. And it's also why the Kroot don't eat the Tyranid, is they don't want to be infected. Well, there's a couple of reasons why people theorize the Kroot don't eat Tyranid. One is that they're like worried that the hive mind will somehow infect them if they eat the Tyranid stuff, or it could be that they don't want that mindless hunger to overtake them in there. And so this powerful hunger is so strong, it might just be like the idea of growing without eating is just such a foreign concept and something that their hunger wouldn't let them do. It's like, okay, so we're gonna have some Tyranid start growing as fungi, but like, how do we not eat them, right? It's like, okay, I guess the counter argument there is like, well, why aren't Tyranid just eating each other? It's like, well, because we're all going out to eat. Like, if a fungus is just sitting there growing, not eating, not fighting, it might be just really hard for the Tyranid to have the patience to let it grow to fruition. Um, yeah, I also will talk about intelligence that requires, because the other thing that the other power that the orcs have is this ability to pass on technology, the knowledge of how to get technology in their DNA. And so it's like, okay, well, what if the Tyranid could have that power to like pass on some of their knowledge? Well, the Tyranid have this hive mind thing that it's not clear if it is like a singular intelligence or if it's just like the manifestation of all of the intelligences of the Tyranid in the hive. But yeah, I'm just not sure it would actually give any benefit because like all the Tyranids seem to be connected already. So any knowledge that they have, I think, is like shared universally. So like passing on knowledge wouldn't be that useful. But in a more core, crucial sense, we've seen that the Tyranid don't value intelligence around technology anyways, right? They've definitely eaten species in our galaxy that have the capability, the genes that give the capability for enough intelligence to innovate and create technology. And I'm sure they've come across that in their galaxy too. Especially in like Warhammer 40K, there's so many races that have the ability to create technology. I'm sure other galaxies have them too. So the Tyranid have definitely come across this, and we don't see any technology in the Tyranid. It's all biological. And so if they really wanted the knowledge of technology, like why haven't they given some of their units the 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 genes for being able to have a brain or the intelligence capable of creating stuff like spaceships and guns? I think that answer boils back to just their crazy hunger. I think the time and patience it takes to think and create technology is too much. Like, I think the hunger just gets in the way. Like, they wouldn't be able to focus or have the patience for it. I, um, that's at least my explanation. Right, these guys. Now, we do know that they have some intelligence, right? Like, they come up with battlefield tactics. They are so like as far as they travel in between feeding, they're usually asleep for that. So I don't know if that's patience. That's just like turning their brain off. And if your brain's off, you're not able to um, develop, innovate, create technology. Now, as I bring this up, there's a potential going back to the fungi thing. Perhaps if they could like turn off their brain while they're growing as fungus, that could be a technology they could use. And then like say they're just growing from whatever material this fungus grows from. That could be a real benefit to them. That's actually scary to think about. Yikes. So let's talk about some of the other traits. So like one of the traits is the orcs get stronger as they fight. Yeah, that seems like it'd be a great trait for the Tyranid to have. Not Sure. I mean, it might just be too strong, and that's why Game Workshop isn't doing that one. So yeah, that's one where I'm like, maybe Games Workshop didn't think about it, or they're just like, it's too strong to give the Tyranid that ability. Like, imagine like someone else made a comment, like, imagine giant swarm lords that just keep growing as they fight, like the orc do. Like, that's pretty insane. So it could be similar to the Kroot idea, where it's like maybe the DNA is too complex because it's like bioengineered by the old ones, and so it's just too complicated for the Tyranid to really understand and adapt to their own units. And maybe it's not even that. Maybe they can break it down and understand it, but it's just hard to incorporate that into their units because all of this DNA for the orcs is tailored for the orcs, right? It it, it allows them to like the ability to produce like spores is so that orcs can produce like spores. And so maybe adapting that to a different form doesn't work. Maybe it only works for orc. Another thing to think about is people often have speculated that when the old ones created the orcs, they gave them a kill switch of some sort because the old ones certainly didn't want this super warfaring race taking over their galaxy, which the orcs are kind of doing in 40k. Like, the only reason they haven't taken over the galaxy is because of their infighting. They're just so numerous, so resilient, they spread so fast, they reproduce so fast, and there's so much fighting going on that it's like the perfect environment for them. It's just like they're like the ultimate race in our galaxy. Of course, the Tyranid come from a different galaxy, so it's a different story there. But yeah, so like the theory is like, okay, the old ones would not want these things running around, but it was a temporary solution to help them with the war in heaven against the Necrons. That's what they were, or really the Catan. Satan, I don't know how to pronounce it, but like the beings that enslaved the Necrons. And yeah, so they just theorized that the old ones would have some sort of kill switch to get rid of the orcs once their purpose was served, once the war was over. Now, of course, the old ones lost the war in heaven, so that's why the orcs are still around, is what people theorize. And so whatever kill switch is inside the orcs, maybe the Tyranids are aware of it, and they don't want it inside them. Because that would be it. Well, okay, even as I say that, that doesn't make sense for a couple of reasons. One, if they're aware of the kill switch, why don't they just use it against the orcs? Maybe they're just not capable of activating the kill switch, but they know it's there, and they know other things can activate it. But then again, it's like we know how picky they can be with what they choose to adapt. Like, they can choose the bonuses from DNA to adapt to their troops. So why would they choose this negative? Well, maybe this negative is like built into the positives of the orc. Maybe there's no way to get the positive bonuses of the orc traits without also inheriting this kill switch. And the Tyranid just don't want that kill switch. No, that would be an interesting solution to the Tyranid problem, because right now it seems like there's no way, like, even if our entire galaxy like rallied, somehow all the warring factions rallied against the Tyranid, it's still like, could they beat them? I think the only hope is the Necron tier, because anything else that the Tyranid fight, it doesn't matter how many casualties they inflict on the Tyranid, as long as the Tyranid win a battle, they recycle everything that they lost, plus all the killed stuff they get from the enemy, plus what was ever on the planet. It just gets added in. They take all the biomass. It's a near 100% efficiency rate of recycling. Like, I saw one person commented, like, the only way to beat them is if you have a really high kill ratio to low biomass, like the Adeptus Mechanicus. Like, maybe, all that mecha stuff is like, it's no biomass for the Tyranids and you're killing tons of them. Well, no, even that's not good enough, because everything you're killing is just getting reabsorbed back into the Tyranid biomass. So that doesn't even help. What you have to do is you have to either destroy their stuff to such a degree that they can't re-simulate it, which is talked about. Like I think Necrontyr have that technology, where they can destroy Tyranid with their weaponry to such a level that it can't be re-simulated, or you just don't have any biomass for them to gain off of, like the Necrontyr. The necrodermises can't be simulated. Um, so why was I talking about this again? Uh, I guess I got a little off on a tangent there. Anyways, going back to our what can the Tyranid gain from the orc discussion? So some other traits that the orc have is their wog or their yeah, like their ability to imagine things into existence. Now that could be potentially useful, like in combat. The reason why I don't think it would be super useful outside of combat is like a empire building thing. Like I don't think they'd be able to imagine like more Tyranid into existence, for example. Because like the only example we see of orcs imagining like physical things in existence is bullets, as far as I'm aware. And I think it works because it's like temporary. Like oh yeah, the gun's shooting. Of course, I believe it's gonna shoot, and so the bullets appear, so it shoots, and then like after it's shot, I'm imagining like the bullets disappear. Like I don't think the casings are on the ground anymore. If the orcs can just imagine things into existence, well then I guess we do need to talk about that because that would be very powerful for the Tyranid to have. Um, that would be very, very powerful. Though there is the question of this belief, right? Like, okay, so like an orc can believe in something, but can a Tyranid really believe anything? Like, they feel kind of mindless. Like, we know they have intelligence, but like, do they have a spirit? Like, can they? I mean, I guess they have psychers, so they can access the warp and they affect the warp. I just have a hard time like a Tyranid believing in something. It seems like they're just like, I want to eat. Um, yeah, like, so those are my two counter arguments against them gaining this power. Is like, can they really believe in anything? And even if they could believe anything, is it just temporary? This power that the orcs have. And if it's just temporary, like yeah, maybe that'll help them in their battles, but it won't help them like grow extra spaceships or like extra Tyranid out of nothing. Though if they are able to believe, and if they are able to believe in things, make things come into existence that are permanent, yeah, that would be pretty scary. Because then like the Tyranid could just like imagine more Tyranid into existence, and then suddenly the Necrontyr might not even be enough to stop them. Okay, so I think is that all of them? We got like their oh yeah, and also like the the orc ability to believe things into existence is often compared to psychers, and the Tyranid already have psychers. So if that's really what it's like, then there's nothing new for the Tyranid to gain. So yeah, I think the overall point I'm trying to make is, well, it's a really intriguing idea, like a Tyranid with all these different powers. I think there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't have these powers, or even if they did have them, wouldn't be that useful. That said, if it is possible for them to gain these powers, like in the best way possible, then that would be pretty scary. So, yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this type of video. It's definitely very different from the other types, and um, I know I'm not like a super expert on Warhammer lore. I mostly just like watch other videos on YouTube for learning my stuff there. But I also like to look up stuff online. I don't play much of the tabletop gaming, which I'm guessing has most of the lore. So I'm definitely missing out on that. But if you do take anything from this video, watch the one I'm going to try to link in the description. It's really sweet. And if you're ever getting tired of Warhammer 40k lore, remember, may the force be with you.